All right, Sefer Yeshua, Parak Aleph, Pasuk Ches. Famous pasuk, we all know this. Lo Yomush Sefer HaTorah Hazeh Mipicha. The Sefer Torah Hazeh, this Sefer Torah should never leave your mouth. V'hagit yomem v'lilah, and you should think about it day and night. L'man tishmar lasos, that you should be able to tishmar. We spoke in the previous pasuk, but that means to do the mitzvahs, to not do the mitzvahs leisasei, meaning don't do the averis, do the mitzvahs leisasei. And lasos is the mitzvahs asei kachol hakosabah, like everything that's written in it. Ki oz tatzliach es d'rachacha, because then all your ways will be masliach. Ve'oz taskil, and then you will be maskil, whatever that's supposed to mean. We'll get to it in a little bit. Obviously, we're not talking about a regular Sefer Torah because it says Sefer HaTorah Hazeh, this Sefer Torah. And Rashi says Sefer Mishnah Torah Haya Lefanov. The Sefer Mishnah Torah, Sefer Dvarim, that was Moshe Rabbeinu talking to Klal Yisrael. That was what Yeshua was. It was in front of him, and that's what we're talking about over here. There's a difference between. Let's just skip a little bit, and we'll get back to it, obviously. But the Laman Tatzliach and Laman Tazgil is Hatzlacha. There's a difference between somebody who has Hatzlacha because he actually did something, and then there's somebody who has Hatzlacha because he had a lot of Siyata Deshmaya, and the guy wakes up one morning and he, moves his couch and finds a lot of money in it. So he was very matzliach. But is that really what hatzlacha is? So we'll see. We'll see what the difference in these lashonos are. So obviously the mitzvah Talmud Torah comes from this pasuk, as well as many other pasukim in the Torah. But we find the Gemara darshans this pasuk in many places to teach us the mitzvah Talmud Torah and different ifanim of Talmud Torah. We see that it's Yomem, Velilah. L'maisa, everybody from the Gemara, downward is busy, telling us different halachas and hadrachas and inyonim and madregas and saidus and kavanas and all kinds of things to be mekayim in the mitzvah Talmud Torah. Aber state, here's the pasuk of that you should always be Isaac b'Torah, and the lashon is ymush. It shouldn't be removed from you. The Sefer HaTorah Hazeh Mipicha, from your mouth. V'hagit yomem v'lilah. So we spoke the other night. We discussed the union of there's a mitzvah Talmud Torah of speaking out the Divrei Torah, and then there's the v'hagit thinking about the Divrei Torah, which is which is something that hopefully we'll get into as well. Yomem v'lilah. There's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah by Yom, and there's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah by Laila. The Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah Perek Gimel Halacha Yud Gimel, I believe it is either Yud Beis or Yud Gimel, towards the end of there. He says that the main kisra shel Torah that a person is zeichet to is by being Isaac b'Torah b'Laila. The specific madrega of being Isaac b'Torah b'Laila. The Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Chav Dalet says, "Machshakim Heshivani Tzapazkin Eicha." He placed me in the darkness. K'meisei Olam. Zet Talmud Shel Bavel. It's Talmud Bavli that we learn. It's the darkness. Why is Talmud Bavli called the darkness? Because it's difficult, and the Medrash Tanchuma and Noach is Gimel, which is very famous, also discusses at great length the Maila and the Madrega of those that are Isaac B'Torah Shabal Peh. Says that the person is only Isaac B'Torah Shabal Peh if he's loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu tremendously. Otherwise, why would he break his head to try to figure it out? Who cares? What's the difference? And the Medrash says if there are Ha'ilchem B'Cheshech Ro or Gadol, those that are working in the Cheshech, they saw the great light. Meaning that when a person comes to clarity in Torah, especially when he's learning Talmud Bavli, which is the main staple of our Talmud Torah these days, our mitzvahs Talmud Torah these days, so that's he's zeichet to an Gadol. But so it's this Hilchos Talmud Torah and Shulchan Aruch and on. What's very interesting is the Shulchan Aruch Harav has a whole section on Hilchos Talmud Torah, very fascinating. Learn Regeshmak Alimut. There's a lot of important yediyas and zachin to know over there, but maybe we'll get to it one day. But Mr. Hashem, Bez Hashem Yisbarach. Fine. So let's talk. The main akud I want to focus on tonight is the concept of this, that Yeshua ben Nun had the Sefer Mishnah Torah Haya Lefanov, like Rashi says. The makar of this Rashi L'chayra is Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis Vav Tes, and this is a quote from the Medrash. Am Reb Shem ben Yochai. It's talking about the sun and the moon over there. And it says, Sefer Mishnah Torah is Signin Yeshua. Yeshua ben Nun, like his thing like some people, like their thing. What's the thing that they talk about? What's something that they're busy with? The signet is like a signet ring. It means like his stempel, his stamp, was Sefer Yeshua. B'shosh nigla lav HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was megala himself to Yeshua. Matzah Yoshev v'Sefer Mishnah Torah b'yadai. He was sitting and holding a Sefer Mishnah Torah. Amaloi, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Chazak Yeshua, Amatz Yeshua. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Chazak, Amatz. Like we spoke a few weeks back, the difference between Chazak and Amatz. Lo yomer Sefer Torah azeh mpicha, and he tells him this pasuk that we're learning now, that you should never move from you, this Sefer Torah. Not loy, v'hera said l'galgal chama. So Yeshua picks up the Sefer Dvarim that he's holding in his hand and he shows it to the son. Omaloi, he tells the son, Kishem shlei demamti mizeh, the same way I never ceased to stop learning Sefer Dvarim, af ata daim lefonai. So to you should cease from in front of me. Miyad vayidem hashemesh v'yireach. When later on we're going to see that we mentioned this a few times already also, that Yeshua was able to stop the sun from its cycle and the moon from moving. When he had the Milchama, he had to finish the Milchama. And how did he do it? What was the trick that he did? The trick that he did was he held up the Sefer Mishnah Torah to the Galgal Chama and he stopped it. How did he stop it? Because he says that Kishem Shlei Demamti Mizeh, the same way I never stopped, I never ceased being Isaac in Sefer Dvarim, you please now stop your cycle of your Seder, of what you do on a daily basis. And the Shemesh was Machnia to Yeshua, and that's how the story happened. Which, with the Seder Dvarim, this medrash is a little confusing, because in a sense it sounds like when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Megala himself to Yeshua in the very beginning, meaning at the beginning of Sefer Yeshua. The Ma'aseh with the Milchama with the sun and the moon was later, but Al Kapanim, the concept that L'chara, the pashtus of understanding what the medrash is talking about, is that this whole koyach that Yeshua had, anything that Yeshua had, kol koychai, is given nor is only because he was Isaac in his signin was Mishnah Torah. What's so special about Mishnah Torah? That's what we want to talk about. The Radal in his Pirush, his Ha'aris on the Medrash Rabbah says over there that there's one of the big tushtails that everyone makes over here is that what was the Sefer Torah over here? So Yeshua had a din of a melech, and a melech is mechuyev to write a Sefer Torah, or is he mechuyev to write a Sefer Torah? Is mechuyev to write two Sefer Torah, right? What exactly is a melech mechuyev to write? So the Radal brings a Yerushalmi that says v'kosav leis Mishnah HaTorah Azos, that's talking about a melech, that you only have to, the Yerushalmi says you only have to write Sefer Mishnah Torah. So he says that Yeshua held like the Medrash, which is a Yerushalmi, which holds like the din of Yerushalmi, meaning that the Medrash Rabbah and the Yerushalmi go together. Meaning the many times in Rashi, I believe, even Rashi shows too that calls Medrash Rabbah Medrash Yerushalmi. So a lot of times Medrash Rabbah and Yerushalmi go, say the same things, go together. So the Radal says this, and he says that Yeshua holds that Yeshua was saying over here that the Medrash holds like the Yerushalmi, that he had a din of the Melech, and the Melech doesn't have to write the whole Sefer Torah, he just has to have Mishnah Torah. That's why he's holding on to the Mishnah Torah as opposed to the whole Sefer Torah, right? It's a Shayla in the Gemara, right? In Gittin. And Dav Samach, who is it that the Torah was given one lump Sefer Torah, or was Chumash, right? And would be just Sefer Mishnah Torah by itself. But the Gemara holds, the Bavli Al Kaponim holds in Sanhedrin, and Daf Chav Aleph, that it's discussing the mitzvah of the Melech, that the mitzvah of the Melech is to write a Sefer Torah, and, so we need to give another pshat why Yeshua was dafka busy with the Sefer Mishnah Torah if the mitzvah on the Melech is to write the entire Sefer Torah, not just Mishnah Torah. So the Yifei Torah on the Medrash writes that he was Isaac in Sefer Mishnah Torah more than the other Chumashim. Mishum the Kai L'chol Dinei HaTorah B'Ktsara was a kitzer of all the Dinei HaTorah, of by Ksuvim Mishpatei HaMelech VaMelchamas, and it has a lot in there about the rules and the regulations for kings and wars, and that's what Yeshua was being Isaac with. So it's very important for him to know those halachas. Fine. Sounds like it was a practical guidebook for him to know what to do. Okay, that's Kain Bali Atesvis in Parsha Shoftim say that the Melech is mechuyev to write a Sefer Torah. He doesn't have to write a whole Sefer Torah. He has to write a Seres HaDibros, which is 620 Osius Gematria Keser. That's 613 mitzvahs deraisa and 7 mitzvahs drabonim. The early people say this. V'nikra sefer Torah lefi sheyesh b'taryag oisiyos k'neged taryag mitzvah shebat Torah. Okay, he says it's taryag. Maybe the Parshas Yisrael and Parshas Veschanan are different. And the Rosh says this also in Parshas Yisrael. And interestingly enough, in the Tshuvas Haga'onim, it brings the Tshuvah to Rav Hai, that l'Rabbeinu Hai Goyim, that this that the Gemara says in Brachas and Daf Yudches, le'yahalech odom u'tfilin b'roishe v'seveter b'zroye v'shayna b'veis hakvaros v'shum leil l'rosh. There's an isser to walk around doing mitzvahs in front of dead people, because like you're being mezalzel on them, because at one point they were able to be mekayim in the mitzvahs, and now they can't. So it's leil l'rosh. It's being mezalzel in the mesim that they can't do mitzvahs. So the Gemara brings a brisa that a person shouldn't walk in a Beis HaKvaros wearing tefillin or with the Sefer Torah or learning in the Beis HaKvaros because of leil l'rosh. So he says over there, the Rabbeinu Hai Goyim says in this tshuva that the kavan of this Gemara is the Aseres HaDibros that has Taryag mitzvahs. So it's not the whole Sefer Torah. Sefer Torah B'Zraya, it doesn't mean the whole Sefer Torah, it just means this piece of a Sefer Torah. And the Sefer Aruch writes, B'Shem Rabbeinu Chananel, B'Shem Rabbeinu Nachshon Goyim, the same thing. The Rashash on Sanhedrin, when he's talking about this Gemara, he says that it's he had like the 613 mitzvahs all spelled out exactly what everything was. He had like a little book, and he was able to look at it when he needed to know something, when he was able to find something. It was very interesting, is because there's a Gemara Brachas. So the Gemara Sanhedrin is talking about the Sefer Torah, and it's mashma that David HaMelech, which we're going to get to in a second, had like a miniature Sefer Torah that was hanging as a bracelet. It's a big problem. Why? Because the Gemara says in Brachas Nafchav Dalet that a toilet tefillah yirtul lo chayev, that a person who hangs his tefillin, meaning holds it b'derech b'zoyim, in a way that's not b'chavdik for the tefillin, yirtul lo chayev. It's not a good thing. His life will be in balance, be hung. So the question is, how does it work with the melech? Right? So the pashtus is that he wore it on a very, very tight bracelet, so it wasn't like swinging around. If the b'zoyin is because it's swinging around, so then this is not swinging around, it's tight. Okay? So it's interesting to shmuz, because it goes like this. The Shar Tshuva in Simon Chavav and Archaim says that David HaMelech went to sleep when he had a Sefer Torah that was tied to his arm. So we know the Gemara Menachos says that when David HaMelech was in the Merchatz, he got nervous that doesn't have any mitzvahs. He says, Mela, during the dam around, there's a mezuzah, and I'm wearing tefillin, and this tzitzis, and this and this, and there's all kinds of things around. Right in the Merchatz, there's nothing there, till he was mazk in the Mila, and he says, that's talking about the Mila. So, he didn't take the Sefer Torah into the Merchatz, obviously, right? But when he was sleeping, he had the Sefer Torah with him. So, there's a big shmuz in the Paiskim, the Magen Avram brings from the Arizal, that you're supposed to sleep with the Tal's cotton at night, right? And the raya is that David HaMelech wasn't doyig about the mitzvahs, that he doesn't have the mitzvah of tzitzis at night. So Elamai, David HaMelech wore tzitzis at night. It's not a raya that David HaMelech wore tzitzis at night. But the Magen Avram doesn't like this, and he says Yesh Lodin on the raya of the Arizal, because maybe there was a mezuzah. Right, so he doesn't need to come onto the mitzvah tzitzis, because if the vard is, he needs to be a mitzvah that's close by to him, that's very close to him. So if he has a mezuzah on the door, what does he need to wear tzitzis for? The mezuzah is also a mitzvah. A pashtus, he had a mezuzah in his room, right? I mean, unless there was if he's being with kind of the mitzvah of Aina, then the mezuzah shouldn't be in the room. The mezuzah should be on the outside of the room, right? Because you can't have tashmish kedusha in the room b'shatz ma'isa, right? But what about when he's in the Merchatz? Then he doesn't have a mezuzah on the Pesach and the Merchatz. You don't put a mezuzah on the doorway of the Merchatz. So the Eliyah Rabbah says that the Rai of the Arizal is talking about the mitzvahs Aina, because then there's no mezuzah in the room, because the mezuzah is on the other side of the door, and he's not considered like he's surrounded with the mitzvah of mezuzah. So then he can't bring a raya from what the Shar Tshuva is saying. Why? Because David was not doig balayla, right? Because he had the Sefer Torah with him. Now, if he's being kind of tzavayna, he didn't have the Sefer Torah there for sure not, right? Just interesting that the Lashon Rambam in Hilchos Sefer Torah says in Parak Zayin Halacha Gimel, Lo Yasser Imay Ela Balayla. He shouldn't remove it from him only at night. Or when he's sleeping in his bed. So he doesn't. He says it's either at night or when he's sleeping on his bed. Mashma that even when he's sleeping in his bed during the day, he shouldn't have the Sefer Torah with him. Agaponim, this is a big shmuz. Agaponim is a big shmuz. This Torah goes on and on, right? But we'll leave it as is, and we'll leave it as is. It's just interesting ideas to know, without not coming to get into the shmuz in particular, but just interesting idea. The Barbanel, when he's being Mefaris of Pasuk, says something very interesting. He says, don't think because the signon of Yeshua was Sefer Dvarim that he wasn't Isaac in the rest of the Chumash also. Avadi, he was Isaac in the rest of the Chumash also. There's so much to learn from Bereshis. I mean, we said before, the Yifei Torah said in the Medrash that the Pshat is because he needed to know about the Milchames and the Mishpatei HaMelech. Avram Avinu was Isaac b'Milchama. The Shvatim were Isaac b'Milchama. There's what to see over there in Sefer Bereshis also. The Yidden had Milchames HaMelech. All kinds of things that were going on all the time. So what's up is this, right? So according to the Das Kenim, that says that he only had Aser Sadibris, so then it becomes an issue. What's the issue? Because the Gemara says in Brachos and Daf Yud Beis that they wanted to be Kaiveya in Kriya Shema as part of the Seder Tefillah of Birkas Kriya Shema to also say Aser Sadibris. They were mevatel meaning before they even had a chance to make this takana, they were mevatel it because the tarem is haminim, because the minim, the apikarsim would complain, would have tainus. What's the tainus? So Rashi says they wanted to be kaveya aser sadibros and kriyishma because shalom yomru la'amei haaretz, so that the minim shouldn't say to the ignoramuses or the ignoremai, if that's the right way to say it, Ein shar Torah emes. The rest of the Torah is not true. V'teidu she'ein karnal masha omar kosh baruch hu v'shamam mipiv b'sinai. So, what's interesting is that if the pshat is that according to the Das Kenim that he's only writing that Ser Sadibris, so we have a shtickle problem. Mail according to what the Radal said from the Gemara, like the Gemara says in the Bavli and Sanhedrin Daf Chof Aleph, and like the Abarbanel is pushing that he should be Isaac in the other Chumashim also. So then it's mistaver to say that the Sefer Torah that Yeshua was holding on to over here was the full Sefer Torah, not just Sefer Dvarim or just the Aser Sadibris. But according to the Das Kenim, what's going on over here, right? Because the Gemara says that they wanted to be Kaveya Aser Sadibris in Kriya Shema, and Lamari said they didn't do it. It's just interesting. What's the Torah Saminim? So Rashi says that they would have said V'teidu she'ein karen al masha amar kodesh baruch hu shama mipiv b'sinai, that they only read. Meaning the only Torah that they read, that they're Isaac in, is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them and what they heard from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Har Sinai. Meaning they're masking to Har Sinai. They're masking that we heard from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Har Sinai, in Narvos, that it's only this and nothing else. Right? L'maisa, everything was nichlal in the Aser Sadibris. Everything is nichlal in the dibur of Anoichi, and everything is nichlal in the word Anoichi, and everything is nichlal in the aleph of Anoichi. We know this Torah, right? But what's going on? So let's take a look at this a little bit. So this hit me one night. It's very interesting to say. What makom is there for this Das Kenim that the Melech would be Isaac would be holding onto a plaque, let's say, of Aser Sadibris, as opposed to the whole Sefer Torah, when we have a Gemara that says that Aser Sadibris by itself is nishtik l'tazach. Right? Then I was thinking maybe it's Einay Daima, because the Gemara Brachos is talking about only to say it b'tzibur together with, only in Kriya Shema. This is it. This is the whole Torah, and that's it. Masha'enkin, if you're writing it, maybe it's something else, right? On the Ma'as, I found the Paiskim talk about it. So I want to just mention what I found. The Mogen Avram. So Mogen Avram brings b'shem b'lechem chamudis. The ein lichtav aser sadibris al kunshas hamiyuchad letzibur. You should not write the aser sadibris on a kunshas that's miyuchad for the tzibur, which sounds like that. We have like Yeshayas and Yirmiyahs that we learn from the Haftarahs. Or if you have a Haftarah book, you shouldn't have a contrast that's specific for the Aser Sadibris, probably related to this reason. Which would sound like, it's mashma from the Gemara that it's just also to read it, not also to write it. But the Munkhatcher in the Munkei Arachaim says he has a Geshmak Sefer, and the whole Arachaim goes through it from the Yonam and Shulchan Aruch. He brings from a Sefer Churas Shai, in Siman Gimel, that in a lot of shuls they have the Aser Sadibris on top, or they have the Aser Sadibris written in a thing, it's a big shmuz. People liked it. People didn't like it. It's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's just interesting. So he brings to write the Aser Sedibros on the outside of a shul is aser. And the Murkei Rechaim, he says that the Al Kain Hizir Me Olam Kved Kedisha Sadoni Avi Meir Rabbi Zechisigun Laini. He brings from his father, Reb Shlomo from Minkach. Shaloi lahamid elu wat havleisam Aser Sedibros michutz lebeis hamedrash or lebeis hakneses v'gam lo l'mayla ma'aron hakodesh klal. Says not to post Aser Sedibros anywhere outside of his medrash or outside of shul, and even on top of the Aron Kodesh not to do it. Ubekama mekem b'shahoyu kvar pal avir ma'aron kodesh. And many shuls and many places that they had the Aser Sedibros on top of the Aron Kodesh, he said to take it down. He was poil stark to take it down. And it's kedai to be careful about this. You know, he sees this as a michshol in a lot of shuls that are, you know, the more modern shuls and the people that are being united towards modernity. And if you're familiar with the Minchas Elazar's writings, he's always very, very stark, you know, very, very vocal about many, many different things. Very vocal altogether. Extreme kanoia on many different things. So all the Torah is beautiful. Everything is very, very geschmack over there. But even those that are neitim ktsasel mischachim, even the ones that are you know, tending towards more modern things, you know, the gamba batim midrashim shal chasidim b'harbe mekaymes. Even in some chassidish batim midrashim they have it. Umechuyavim limchais v'limnoya, and you're mechuyev to be moicha and to stop it. V'lamazir v'lanizar shleimim tein kaminahar. Anyone who's careful about this or could be mazir other people about this, he'll have shleimim tein kaminahar. That's what he ends up. He gives a gavaldig bracha to anybody who could be mechazik this. Okay, what do we have here? Oh, we don't have it. Shtibel were good. Yeshiva not so good, right? It was a big shmuz. It's very interesting. The luchas in many shuls are round, right?
2 tablets.
Yeah, you know, Moses came down with 2 tablets, right? But you know, they're round and they're square, and it is a problem. It's not a problem. Okay, whatever. The shmuz. It's different shmuz. Another interesting zach is, and I wrote about this after, you know, I didn't pull it out, but there's a very interesting zach. The Ber Moshe, the Ozra Rebbe, I think it was last week. It was fascinating. He wrote on Chumash. I think I mentioned this. He wrote on the entire Chumash. It's 10 volumes, I mean 2 volumes on each Chumash, and he has a nach also. I don't know the whole nach, but Zicher from Yeshua through Malachim, and he wrote on Shas also, and he tried to print it, and every time he printed it, something happened. He tried 3 times. After that, he stopped. He also has a Sefer Eish Das. It's 10 or 12 or more volumes. Each volume is close to 1,000 pages, if not more. Fascinating Zachen, Torah, Avodah, Madregas. He knew called her kula. It's clear. Every page is called her kula there, and it's very, very fascinating to go through. Anyways, he brings from this medrash that we're talking about now, that Sefer Mishnah Torah is signally Yeshua b'shash nigel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says that there were kama tzadikim that would utilize Sefer Dvarim for their Musa Sefer, and it's mesugel to be ma'ir a person to tshuva, and the Tov lilmod by kol hashana kama psugim b'chol yom, and every day throughout the year to learn a couple of psugim from Sefer Dvarim, you'll be all right. And Reb Tzadik brings from the Yiddah Kaddish that the Yiddah Kaddish will learn a few psukim from Sefer Mishnah Torah, and he would say that that was his Musa Sefer. And there's a Sefer Beis Yankov he brings from Rabbi Yaakov Aaron Alexander, that he brings from Rabbeinu Mepshischa, Ki ha'etza ha'yeuta la'adam she'nafshay choshko losha b'tshuva shlema l'fanav yisbarach, she'yilmad kol hashana Sefer Mishnah Torah, that the whole year he should be Isaac in Sefer Mishnah Torah, u'bezei yis'erer levav l'tshuva. And like this, it will be ma'ir him to tshuva. And not only did the Chassidim say that, the Netziv also says that. The Netziv writes in the Emek Davar, beginning of Sefer Dvarim, L'madnu, Zeh ha-Sefer b'yichud, yesh l'hoitzim mimenu kol lefanei musar. There's what you can take at any and all types of musar. Okay. Which we have to understand what's more musadig in Sefer Dvarim more than we have in all the other Svarim. Right? We said fakert. We said in the Hakdama, we said that Gemara says, we'll get back to this Gemara in a little bit also, that Yeshua Bulvad, because everything else is Teichacha, because everything else was because of Chatam that they did. So we have to see what how that plays out. But in the Mepharshei Medrash, the Maharzu says that the Koil HaShemesh, the sound of the Shemesh, it's a Gemara, is Heilig Miseifa Olam Bad Seifa, right? And this Koil, this Koil and the Sivav, the cycle that the sun goes around, what's it called? The rotation. That's the word I was looking for. The sun's rotation is Iker Chiyusai, that's its life, that's its Metzias, and it says Shira B'Koilai, and like the pasuk says, Hashemayim Mesabim Kved Kel. So the Shemesh tells Yeshua that it's not shaykh for me to stop my rotation and to be quiet from my Shira. You can't tell me to do that. Now Yeshua tells him Nishtazah, because my Esek HaTorah is more chashuv than your singing. By you being quiet, it's going to be a greater Kiddush Hashem. It's going to be a greater Kiddush Shem Shemayim than if you continue. Why? Because it shows that you're being machniya to the Torah. And it's interesting because the Chassid Yavitz in Pirkei Avos brings us and he says the same exact idea. He says, the Mishnah Avos says, "Hamafzik mi mishnasai va'omer manoah ilon zeh harei zeh mischayev b'nafshay." A person who stops and he says, how beautiful this tree is, mischayev b'nafshay. Now, if a person is not oisik the Torah, and he's admiring HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Gevaldige Bria, which a person should, especially if you're a Rebbe Victim Hiller person, then definitely you should, right? Or you will, Mela, right? And he says, because says the Chassid Yavitz that there's nothing be'etzem wrong with saying Mana Ilan Zeh. That's not a problem. The problem is that you're being mafsik from a shira and a shevach that's much, much greater to go to something that's much lower. Now, I don't want to get into this now, but Istakal by Raisa Bara Alma, right? Because Baruch looked into the term created the world. In a certain sense, you're able to study the Bria with this lens of Istakal by Raisa Bara Alma and see exactly which ICAs, which Tzirufi ICAs make up the different parts of the Bria. So you're saying Mana Ilan Zeh, right? So what exactly are you being mapsik from? You're mapsik me Mishnasai. If it is your Mishnasai, so then that's what you're learning, so that's good. There's no problem with that, right? But if you're mapsik me Mishnasai to say Mana Ilan Zeh, then it's a problem. Okay, fine. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more about what's miyuchad but Sefer Dvarim. What was Yeshua doing? What's going on over here? The Gemara Megillah on the Vlamad Aleph is talking about the different Kriyas HaTorahs of the year, and the Gemara says over there, Amar Abaya Loshanu Ela B'Klalos Shebeteres Kehanim. This day it can't be mafsik in the Klalos when you're reading the Teichecha is Dafka in Sefer Vayikra. But the Teichecha in Sefer Dvarim, mafsik, you could stop. There's no problem stopping in the Teichecha of Sefer Dvarim. My time was pshat. Halalu mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Namru b'lashon Rabbim namru. Halalu Moshe mipi atzmei amran u'b'lashon Yochid. What's the difference? Because the Gemara says that the Sefer Vayikra was mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it was b'lashon Rabbim, right? But the ones from Sefer Dvarim are mipi Moshe mipi atzmei, and it's lashon Yochid. And therefore, what? So the fact that it's mipi HaKadosh Baruch Hu and mipi Moshe, okay, that we could hear. But to just say that it's lashon Rabbim, lashon Yochid, what's that about? So because Moshe Rabbeinu said Mishnah Torah to them, then we could be mafsik in it, right? So what does it mean that Moshe mipi atzmei amrei? Right? The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that Tzadi Tes, Ha'omer kol ha'Torah min hashamayim chutz mi pasuk echad she'amrei Moshe me atzmei hu b'chlal kidvar Hashem baza. Says that when the Gemara is talking about what's that because it's a person doesn't have a chelik in el mavah, a person says that Torah is not min hashamayim, right? A person says that kol ha'Torah is min hashamayim chutz mi pasuk echad. So it's even one pasuk or even part of a pasuk. So he's b'chlal dvar Hashem baza. So then what's going on? Meaning, not that the Gemara is making it dvar Hashem baza b'chaz shalom, but like what's the pshat that the Teichecha from Sefer Dvarim is so different? Obviously, there's something inherently different about Sefer Dvarim than what you have by the Shar HaChumashim. The Maral explains in Tiferes Yisrael and Parak Manvav, he says like this: Ein hakavana b'zeh chas v'shalom sheyomer Moshe diber mipi atzmai af ois achas. Chas v'shalom to say that Moshe did something on his own, said with even one letter on his own. What's the difference between Mishnah Torah and the rest of the Torah? The Torah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Klal Yisrael has two ideas to it. There's one that it's coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu Aleim, that He is the Noisen HaTorah, and the second Bechina is Mitzad Klal Yisrael, that they're Mekabel the Torah. Now, so if you pass something from one hand to another, right, you're not really giving it, it's staying in the same place. If you give something to your friend and they're equal madregas, it's not two different people, it's bechina achas, they're both equals. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the Torah to Klal Yisrael, He is al hakoil, He is in charge of everything, controls everything, created everything. V'heim ba'aretz, and Klal Yisrael is on the ground. So there's an inherent difference between the Neis and Makabel. Because Baruch Hu is b'shmei shemayim, we're on the aretz, right? And right, the Gemara says that because Baruch Hu is on shemayim and you're on the aretz, al king yud v'rechem mu'atim, right? But here we're saying that there's the Torah that we're getting from up on high that's very different than than if we would be up on high, so to speak. I guess in a certain sense. And therefore, the entire Torah, besides for Sefer Dvarim, the entirety of the first four Chumashim is entirely Mitzad HaNoisen. Makabel b'Seif. Makabel doesn't get it right away; he has to be Makabel at the end. He has to wait to receive it. That's why it's called Mishnah Torah. That the concept of Mishnah Torah is that after Moshe Rabbeinu was Makabel in whatever Bechina, whatever Oifen, however you can understand the first four Chumashim, he was then able to repeat and create this Mishnah Torah. Okay? But he goes weiter and he says like this. In the other Chelkei Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the words in the mouth of Moshe Rabbeinu, and Roshchina b'daberes b'tekreinu shel Moshe. But by Mishnah Torah, it's not that it wasn't from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it was entirely from HaKadosh Baruch Hu the same way the rest of the Torah is. Just when Moshe Rabbeinu gave it over to Klal Yisrael, it was Moshe Rabbeinu himself saying it. It wasn't Shechina b'daberes b'tekreinu. I believe the Archaim HaKadosh writes in a place that when Roshchina b'daberes b'tekreinu, it was like everybody else is being Makabel the Nevuah because they're hearing the Shechina speak, right? It's not like they're hearing Moshe Rabbeinu talk. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't talking. It was Shechina Medaberes Mitach Grainu. It was an entirely different program. The Mishnah Torah is much more outstanding. The Mishnah Torah is much more of a makabel. So I want to just speak something out. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah darshans the pasuk in the first capital of Tehillim, and it says, "Kim b'seres Hashem chefetz v'seirasoi yegre yomam v'lilah." Right? That first, it's practically Gemara. Is it Teres Hashem or is it Teres Sai? So first, it's Teres Hashem, and then when you're Isaac, it becomes Teres Sai. It becomes your Torah. And now a person has the Achilles from there is a time when we're learning, especially when we're learning new things. We don't know what's flying. We're completely being makabel from everything that we're learning, right? But we could get to the point, we could get to the madrega where we could be mashpia onto the Torah. When a person is mechadish, he's expanding the Torah, he's making the Torah bigger, right? There's something new here that wasn't here before, right? Memela, there's a Torah delay, there's a Torah that he is able to give to the Torah, he's able to be mashpia onto the Torah. And it's a Gavaldik Chiddush if you think about it, because we just said before that the whole Torah chat is that it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Shmei Shemayim, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu on high, and what does it have to do with us, right? And then Maral says, I remember Ibn Hillel saying over this Maral years ago, I was a little kid back in Kavashir, and he said like this, he said, people say it's like Grace of Pella, that how could a bus of a dumb be Isaac B'Torah? It's so high. So she came Pella. You have a neshama? A neshama gives you the Achelis of Isaac B'Torah. It's not a question. You want to ask a different. You want to ask the question the right way. Say, what am I right to have a neshama? That maybe, but that's the right way to look at it. There's nothing shver if I have a neshama to learn Torah. It's memela. Makes sense. It sounds very morally. It sounds about right? But back to what we're saying that the concept is that a person is able to be mashpia on the Torah, and that's what it means when a person can have his own Torah. Meaning, many times, I would say it's more a Torah Shabbat Torah Shabbat Peh type of thing. Any little understanding that we have that's even not that far removed from the text itself in Torah Shabbat falls under the category of Torah Shabbat Peh, right? Now, once it was Eis Lasses Hashem Mefer Torah Sech and Mishnah and the Gemara were all written down, now we have a text called a Mishnah, now we have a text called a Gemara, right? Memela, in a certain ifin, that is a Torah Shabbat, right? And the way we understand that, our understanding of that becomes it's a Torah Shabbat Peh on the written Torah Shabbat Peh. And it goes down outside Kol Adairis until us sitting here together can be mashbiya onto the Torah with all this Torah that's been going on. Okay. Therefore, the proper way to view Sefer Dvarim, that it's different in the sense that Moshe Rabbeinu is not speaking mitoich, the Shechina is not being medaberes mitoich greinish al Moshe, nor was Moshe Rabbeinu speaking it up by himself. When a person is able to relate to the Torah in a sense that he's giving something over, he's learning something, he's understanding something, to the point where he's giving something over, to the point where he's being mechader something, right? That's Torah Shabbat Peh, right? So in a certain sense, if you wanted the breakdown of Torah Shabbat till Torah Shabbat Peh, you have the first 4 chumashim, Shechina medaberes b'tech greinish shel Moshe, right? Chumash Dvar, the Torah is Moshe Rabbeinu speaking himself, which in a certain sense is going to be the, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the pregame for Torah Shabbat Peh. Yeshua coming into Eretz Yisrael, Hagam, that Nach, and Befrat for Yeshua more than anything else, is a chelik of Torah Shabbat. But Eretz Yisrael, in and of itself, is a certain type of Torah Shabbat Peh, which we spoke by the halach shen shtachu b'mei evlei shel Moshe, which was only possible because it was Torah Shabbat Peh, right? There's a yavit in Erevin, right? Because the Gemara says you have to chazer everything 4 times. The yavit says it's not true, because now that everything's written down, you don't have to chazer it because it's there already. The whole point of chazara be'etzem was of Pentishkach, Vayisham l'cha Pentishkach, is because if you don't review it, you're not going to remember it, and then it's going to be forgotten. It's not the pshat that like you've misplaced your notebook. It's going to be forgotten l'ol me'ad, right? If you don't remember it, it's Torah Shabbat Peh. It doesn't exist outside your mind. Now, if you lose your mind, then it's over, right? But that's the Yavit says in Erevin, on Dalet on the base or so, on Gimel on base, on Dalet on the base. But that's a component. That's what he says. Mela, when we're coming closer to now, we know the Mishnah Navis. Mishnah Navis says, "Ma'aseh kibul Torah misinai, Mesorah Yeshua." That is Torah Shabbat Peh. And we spoke last week. We spoke to the other shurim that the pshat is that there was a lot of Torah that wasn't nitin likasev in Sefer Yeshua that Moshe gave over to Yeshua as a personalized Torah, hadracha, whatever you want to call it, from the Rebbe to the Talmud. The bridge that connects the Torah, the Mishnah Torah. Mishnah Torah is the sefer that connects Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. And the Shemi Shmuel speaks a sentence in Parshas Dvarim. He says this idea that in the entire Chumash you have the Shechina medaberes b'tech greinish shel Moshe, and the Dibur is not Mesyaches Elov, but by Mishnah Torah Moshe mepi atzmei amra, and he says that therefore this is the in between of Torah Shabbat and Torah Shabbat Peh. He says that Torah Shabbat Peh includes all kinds of chedushim and maskonas that's not necessarily written, but everything has a ois, everything has a drosha, everything has a makar in Torah Shabbat. And we spoke many times already that the idea is to be able to find everything in Torah Shabbat. Moshe was Mesader Mishnah Torah, meaning also the concept that Moshe is chazering over and being koilel other things and that's already a Torah Shabbat Peh kind of idea, because it's not just here's the text. Moshe is telling you something, he's teaching you something, he's explaining to you something. Any explanation is Mela a Torah Shabbat Peh de Gezach, right? Mela Mishnah Torah Hagam it's a Chumash, but Nichlal in that is Torah Shabbat Peh. Now the Shemesh was saying Shira and didn't want to stop because of Yeshua. So Yeshua said, I'm also learning at every given moment and even b'shas mulchama. I'm sorry, he says b'shas mulchama ani mavatal. So, like the Gemara Megillah says that the Malach came to him and said atabasi, and was giving him musar that he wasn't learning, right? So he says, I'm going to be mavatal also to allow you to fight the war. So al kain gam ata doim lefanim ilay mashiv leilech. So he should be able to fight. Okay, fine. That's a little bit about Sefer. That's l'chera the matzav about Sefer Dvar. Okay, let's see the Radak. The Radak says lo yomos nechlku Rabbi Seinu Zal the machlekes in the Rabbi Seinu is a pasuk yesh ayim shu mitzvah l'chol yimei adam. Some say that it's a mitzvah for all the days of a person's life. I feel yedei kol haTorah, even if a person knows kol haTorah already. There's a certain Talmud Chacham in Yerushalayim that was my father's chavrusa back in the day. My father, like, what does he learn? It's like, he knew everything 30 years ago. What does he learn today? Right? And you always wonder. You know, people that know everything when they're young, what do they learn when they're old? So they chazer it. They try to be mechadash numahalchim. I don't know. I'm not there yet. I can't talk. But Mitzvah Shem. V'yesh emrim shehu bracha. Yesh emrim that it's a bracha. V'hanira. V'yesh emrim shehu bracha. V'hanira. And it seems that the pshat in the pasuk is like this. Ki hoyse mitzvah li Yeshua. V'chein l'chol adam. Ad sheyeda ha-Torah. V'achach yomad ha-chachmas. That the first was a mitzvah for Yeshua, and then for, this pasuk was said to Yeshua, and it's written in here to give it over to everybody else as well. And then he can learn other chachmas, which is a big shmuz in the Gemara Menachos, that he says if you find that he asked his uncle, when can you learn chachma Yavanis? He told him if you find a man that's lo yom v'lilah, then you can learn it, because the pasuk says lo yom v'shefer teres mpicha v'gisa b'yom v'lilah. Okay. I just want to get back to that Abarbanel, so we could look at it inside. That we already mentioned the pasuk earlier about being mekayim in the mitzvahs. So this pasuk is not coming to teach us to do the mitzvahs. This pasuk is coming to teach us to be oisik be'iyun haTorah, and not just in the mitzvahs hamaisius and how to figure out the halachas, but also in the chelak hanisim and the sipurei ha'avos, to be mizbainin in them, and to learn it well, and to understand it, and to take out practical applications from them. There's tremendous chachma and tremendous yosher peulas that we can learn from them. That's a pshat why he says v'gisa b'yomam v'lilah. Okay, and then he says as the taskil. You're going to find all kinds of chachmas out there. He says, but the ikar haskala, the ikar seichel amiti, the ikar of what we have is in the chachmas haTorah, in the chumash halein, and there's nothing else. Now everybody uses the Abarbanel is like from the most thorough pirushim on Tanakh b'chlal, chumash also, and it's used very, very stark in a sense to to understand the Bible, so to speak. It's a very biblical. If you keep your eyes and ears open, they're always busy bringing a Abarbanel to slug up the Christians, and he wrote against the Christians, Afka, and he and others also. So really, the pshat is that a person gets very fachapt in one specific inyan, and he forgets that there's the rest of the Torah out there. So the Abarbanel, he's not saying this, like this, but I just what you could maybe say is that. So it's the vision that is, I always tell people that are busy with chelas, so like these kind of things. So by the way, I just want to let you know there's another 612 mitzvahs too that you may have forgotten about, right? Just don't forget about it. Interesting. There's a Beis Halevi that comes to mind over here a little bit. That there's not. Klal Yisrael said nasa v'nishma. How could you do, right? How could you do? And then here, does this make sense? Right? Migila Raz said that the Malach Yashar some shtamshim by we get to numbers, whatever, however he's miyasher that line in the Gemara. But the point is that the Beis Halevi says that nasa is that we're going to understand, we're going to learn meaning that there's two parts of the Torah. There's Torah and mitzvahs, right? Torah is more sichli, if you want to call it that. Then there's the mitzvahs, or peulas, the ma'aseh yadayim, the physical. Right, which we'll talk about, I don't know, tonight, or maybe a different night. But I'll go upon him. The concept is like this. He says, Nasa, if I need to learn Hilchas Shabbos to know what to do on Shabbos, that doesn't fall under the category of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah, l'shem Talmud Torah. I need to know how to put on tefillin, so I need to learn Hilchas Tefillin. That Hilchas Tefillin that I'm learning, it's gebunden with the mitzvah tefillin. Or I'm learning Hilchas Tzitzis to know practically how to do that. So, like everyone says, why are we learning these Gemaras that have nothing to do? We don't have cows, right? Why are we learning about cows? Well, first of all, maybe you do have a cow. I don't know. But just in case your neighbor might buy a cow. Really, it's for your neighbor, not for you. Because what if the neighbor's cow damages you, right? Or your property or whatever it might be, right? But the concept is that's good for the mitzvah Talmud Torah. If everything that we're learning is practical, right? Then it's l'shem mitzvah. I need to learn Hilchas Lulav and Esrog to know how to do Lulav and Esrog. So it falls under the category of mitzvahs maisiyos as opposed to the mitzvah Talmud Torah that I'm learning for the sole purpose of learning. The practicality of the mitzvah Talmud Torah is to sit and learn Torah, not to know how to. Now, avada, if I'm going to learn properly, I'm going to know how to be Shmai Taliba the Hilchasa and come out with the maskana and come out with the psak and come out how to do halacha l'maisa. Of course, that's true. No one's going to deny that. I mean, people end up not getting there, but I don't know if they actually deny that. It's a separate shmooze, right? But akapanim, in a certain life, if it's practical, it may not fit directly into the mitzvah Talmud Torah the way the Beis Levi says it. I think I got this right. I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look. But akapanim, either way, a person is still mekayim the mitzvah Talmud Torah, right? A person learns afilu ois achas. There's still some, is it the l'shem Torah, whatever that's supposed to mean? L'shem Torah, whatever that's supposed to mean. L'shem yediyas ha-Torah, l'shem being Isaac b'Torah. I'll go upon it. Okay. Just like two more things before we get lost. The Malbim says, Ki lo yomush sheyesh oy t'nai milvad min ha'maisa. Yeah. The Malbim says that lo yomush is telling you over here that there's another t'nai besides for the mitzvahs maisiyos, and that is the iyun and the esek ha-Torah. Which is interesting because we'll see that the etzem way that they fought the milchama was through esek ha-Torah. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling him giving him this pep talk before he's going out to war, so he's telling him this whole matzah has got to be about being Isaac b'Torah. That's where it's at. Lo yomush mpicha shu ha'esek lilmod v'lishnois halachas ha-Torah mitzvoseh v'hagisa bay sheyachshay v'ya'ayin tamid b'chelik ha'iyuni shabatorah. That you should constantly be thinking and delve into constantly the thinking parts of the Torah. And the tachlis of the iyun and the ezek Torah is that you'll come out knowing how to do the mitzvahs properly. We mentioned this Yesod many times already, that many ideas in Torah Shabbat Peh are all to be found. Ksuvim u'reshumim b'Torah Seksav, al pi klali haloshen, al pi amida she'Torah nedreshes behem, and that's really where it's at. That's really where it's at, to be able to find. That's what he's telling him, that you'll be able to deduce everything from Torah Shebiksav. Okay. I want to get to a Pachad Yitzchak in Shavuos, Maimer Mem Hey. I want to go through it. It's not too long. It's not too short either. It's about a page. Over here for us, it's a page. But just to a shtigl hakdama to the Indian. Yirmiyahu Hanavi. Yeah. I'll try to, do this as fast as we can. Yirmiyahu Hanavi, right? The Gemara says, is Rubai Kikulai is Isaac in the Churban of Klal Yisrael. Yeshaya is Rubai Nechama. Yirmiyah is Rubai Churban, right? It's a famous kasha, because the Rambam says that a Navi has to be Mekabel the Nevuah B'Simcha. So how's Yirmiyahu able to be Mekabel the Nevuah? He was pretty, most of the stuff he was hearing was pretty miserable. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to him, and Mamish in the first psukim, Akash Baruch Hu tells him, "Listen here, you won the jackpot. You're becoming a navi." So he says, "Hine lo yadati daber kinar anachi." He says, "I don't want this. Ich bin a nar." He says, "I'm young," and therefore what? Right? He says that the filu uber shemei iman amrushira and the ra shiv chalayam ashla ra yecheskel mambuzi. There's all kinds of madregas where he didn't want nevuah. I mean, maybe he knew that the nevuah was about churban and he was hesitant because of that. But Rashi at the beginning of Yirmiyah, Sefer Yirmiyah says an interesting thing. He says, "Eini kedai lo heichichan." I can't give them mussar. Moshe heichichan samach l'misasai. Moshe gave teichacha right before he died. Kvar nechshav beinayim bekam anisim she'asu lehem. Meaning because they already knew Moshe Rabbeinu. And it was a while already, 40 years that Moshe Rabbeinu was schlepping with these chaver around, right? Or these chaver were schlepping Moshe around, however you want to say it. Hoitziyim mitzrayim, v'kar lehem es hayam, ha'ered es hamon, higaz es haslav, nasalem es ha'torah, hel es ha'be'er. Ani b'tchila shlichusi. I'm just starting out. I can't give teichacha. It's one thing if you've been around and you're a rov that everybody respects. Everyone knows. The last thing that you do, or the last thing that you do in your first shot at being a Rav is to give somebody Musa. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells you, tell them that you're going to get destroyed, tell them Yerushalayim is going to burn, tell them it's a mikdash. He says, ich bin a nar. I can't tell them anything. Moshe did everything b'soif. Mishnah Torah, what we just said, that was b'soif Yamav. While Moshe bears a Torah, that was Shvat, Moshe dies in Adar. Right? Besides for the Yalkut that says that he died in Shvat. But okay, besides. Right? Not too many people know that Yalkut, but it's important to know because then you can make your Moshe Rabbeinu Yartzeit through this, add another day to the Yartzeit. So he says, "Ani betchila shlichus, ani bola hichicham." I'm starting out. I'm going to come and give them teichacha. Doesn't come in. Very interesting thing. It's just an observation. I'm not coming to say pshat on anything. It's just an observation that I had. How does the Torah refer to Yeshua ben Nun? That he's a nar lo yamish miteichayil. He's a nar. He's not at the stage that he's going to be giving Musa. That was because when Moshe Rabbeinu was alive. It's itachin. Now I don't know this for sure. It's itachin. I mean, in the psukim, it doesn't say that he should give the Musa, but it does say in the very beginning, Kol asher yamra es picha is bad news. Right? Pasuk Yud Ches. Kol ish asher yamra es picha v'lo yishmas v'rechel chol asher tzavenu yumas. Rak chazak v'ematz. He's right with the chazak v'ematz, but anybody who speaks out against you is chazak v'ematz. He just took over Kol Yisrael. He's a new Rav. He's a new rabbi. He's going to give the Musa Azah. But if the Torah is that he's a direct hemshech of Moshe Rabbeinu ends Mishnah Torah is mamshech with Sefer Yeshua. So it's very good past to say that Yeshua can start off the Shtela giving them Musa. You think that they're coming to Eretz Yisrael, so it's not pshat that I can't give them Musa. He's got to give more hadrach than anybody else. In the fighting, right, and the settling everybody. Then you have all these mitzvahs at Tlias Ba'aretz that they don't necessarily ever did before. Not only they don't, think about it. Did they even know how to plant? And they were living in the midbar. They had not covered. They had the Be'er. They had all these things going for themselves.
And Moshe was bringing them, and Yeshua was not taking over.
Yeah. So Yeshua could give the Moshe right away. It was just an interesting observation. I don't know if this is right, this is wrong. I don't know, just a thought. Okay. Let's see what the Rishuva and the Pachid Yitzchak says. It's a very, very interesting shmuz, as most things in the Pachid Yitzchak are. Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai Masar Yeshua. That's the Mishnah Novice. Zui Hatabas Rishayna. This is the first link in the chain. B'shal Shalas Hamasirish Al Koliyas HaTorah. This is the first link in the chain of the passing down the tradition of the Torah. Av Matzino Oitabas Protzes Asher Yeshua Ochus Al Yoda B'Moshe. We see another specific ring in this chain, or link in this chain, that Yeshua is holding on to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ki Chachamim Higidu, the Chachamim have taught us she Sefer Dvarim Nasa Signin Yeshua, that Sefer Dvarim was the stempel for Yeshua. Okay? V'amru Oid, and the Chachamim say Vaytze, Ki B'shasha Nigla Kadosh Baruch Hu Yeshua Matzek she Sefer Dvarim B'yodai. He found him with Sefer Dvarim in his hand. Sefer Dvarim. Hold on to that. And it should never leave you ever. Ad kan midvrem shel chachamim. Ad kan what the chachamim said. What was going on over here that Yeshua is holding on to this sefer? And obviously there's something miyuchad, like we were saying before. There's something special. There's something unique. There's something to learn from over here that Yeshua is holding on to Sefer Dvarim stronger than. It's not just a regular piece of the Messiah. What's going on here? Matzinu gabe Hagar. We find by Hagar that after Sha'acha Sharasa ki Harasa Nashtani Yachsal Sarah, we find that the relationship, her communication with Sarah changed. Vatokel be'eineha, and she started being mizalzel. Umamshach hakasav, the pasuk continues. Ve'omer vata'aneha Sarai v'tivrach mipaneha, and Sarah was champering her, and she ran away. V'kamal kumusim nishtabel lefarish darka shel Sarah remain. Many pens have been broken to try to understand what's going on over here with Sarah remain, that she's champering Hagar, and then Hagar runs away. Shahoisa ma'ana as Hagar, that she's paining or bothering Hagar, until it causes her to run away. One of the great people, one of the great chachmei ha'avoda, I have to love his sprach over here, in the generation before us, which is probably 2.5 generations ago, shed some light on this concept. Isa Breish Brachas, the Gemara Brachas Davches says, a person should always live in the same place as his Rebbe. The whole time that Shimi ben Gera was alive, Shlomo didn't marry Bas Parai. Now, Shimi ben Gera was around in the times of David HaMelech, and he made problems for David. David was mitzvah Shlomo to kill him. Shimi ben Gera. That's a story in the beginning of Sefer Malach. So Kolzman, he was alive, he didn't marry Bas Parai. Uparach halav Gemara, frekti Gemara me braysa the mefurish ba, that there's a braysa that says beferish the la'ilam al yadar adam b'makam rabbi, that a person should never live in the place of his Rebbe, meaning in the same town as his Rebbe. And I don't know how he could be a Rebbe if you never lived next to him. But I guess you have to travel to the Rebbe. I don't know, right? But Uparach the Gemara answers had the kayv le, but the loy kayv le. It depends. If you're machnia yourself to your Rebbe, then you live next to your Rebbe. And if you don't machnia yourself to your Rebbe, then you can't live next to your Rebbe. Pirush Rashi, the Kayvle, Hainu de Mekabel Teichachtoi. Rashi says that it says that he's Kayvle, that he's machnia to him. It's not just that he's machnia to him, but he's also Mekabel Teichacha from the Rebbe. V'loi Kayvle, Hainu de Mekabel Menu Teichacha. And Loi Kayvle means that he's not Mekabel Teichacha from him. Shamisha Eina Mekabel Teichacha, a person who's not ready to be Mekabel Teichacha from his Rebbe, also Leilodu b'Makom Rabbi, it's also for him to live in the same place as his Rebbe. Okay? It's still a good thing to know, right? I think in today's day and age, I don't know if anyone has Rebbes, I don't know if anybody could consider themselves Talmuds, and I don't know if anybody knows what Teichacha is today, right? And Paiskim have said this is not me talking, right? But Al-Kapanim, it's just interesting that, b'Makom where it's a problem, so then a person should not live b'Makom Rabbi, right? And this is the pshat in the parasha that Sarah was having issues with Hagar. What was going on? Because the Hagar was getting a little too familiar and too heimish, if you will, with Sarah. Hagar fell under the category of a Talmud that doesn't want to be machnia to a Rebbe, to the point where they're not going to be Mekabel Teichacha. Today the kid tells the Rebbe, jump in the lake, right? And then the Rebbe gives him a big hug, and the kid is in the bathing suit. The Rebbe is wearing his hat, jacket, and tie, jumps in the lake and goes swimming with the bacher, and he's Mekav the bacher, then becomes Rosh Kohen in Yerushalayim. That's how it works today. Yeah? But upon him, that Nichnasa Hagar Bechlal Talmud Shein Mekabel Rabbi Ad She'eino Mekabel Teichacha, to the point where the Talmud is not Mekabel to Teichacha. V'kahai Gav Nechal Isser Al Hagar Lo Damim Kayim Shel Sarah. Mela becomes Asur for Hagar to live in the same place as Sarah, so she's got to leave. I think that's a very interesting twist in how to look at the parsha. But I'll go upon him as I talk there. U'mepnei Kach Naga Sarah B'din Hakfila Frushem Eisura. Sarah Dafka shepherded her Kedei that it should be ma'ur and hagar, this idea to be mafresh from me'eser. Okay. V'zeh, hu pesha davar ha'inu shal Sarah. This is the pshat that Sarah was shepherding her. She'echrichas hagar lefresh min iser shal dir b'makom ha'ravid loy kayefle. Because it's Aser, and Hagar wasn't going to listen to her, right? And Velilah, that's what she had to do in order to get her to realize that. We see from here, the Kabbalah that having a Rebbe, having a Messiah Satira is very much dependent or goes hand in hand, or two sides of the same coin as being able to be Mekabel Techacha. Doesn't say that the Talmud is not allowed to live in a place where he won't be Mekabel Techacha. It says that it's also for a person to be Yoder B'Makam Rabbi. Period. Blank. It doesn't say L'gabe, specifically Techacha. V'rak b'Rabbi namar halachazu. It's saying dafka about his Rebbe. Therefore, you have to say the Yeshba b'Kabbalas divrei Torah min harav mechayv miyuchel l'Kabbalas Techacha. The same way that you're Mekabel divrei Torah from the Rebbe, you're also mechuyev to be Mekabel Techacha from the Rebbe. Meaning it's the same exact thing. And if a Talmud refuses to be Mekabel Techacha from the Rebbe, it spoils and it ruins the Techacha that a person gets from his Rebbe. And this hashchasa, this tremendous lack of derech and chutzpah that this person has towards the Rebbe, person is not machniya to his Rebbe, so it shows that he doesn't care about his Rebbe. It shows that his Rebbe doesn't mean anything to him, right? Someone asked around Shechta why he slept so old the chasanas. He's a man in his 80s, his upper 80s. You're sleeping the chasanas every night. Someone asked him what's pshat. So he said because it's the biggest night in this person's life, and if he's my Talmud, and if I can't be there for my Talmud on that night, and I have no mokum to ever give him Musar Techacha ever again. So I think, to me, it was just interesting, like between the lines, what I was seeing from what Rashi was writing in Vachid Yitzchak, it's just that I see that you can't have a Rebbe that doesn't give Techacha, and you can't have somebody that gives Techacha. I mean, a person who gives Techacha and is not your Rebbe, also Hadish came plat, right? And you have it. I remember in camp, somebody one time gave a whole drasha and gave Musar about learning, and Hasmada and Bein Zman trips and whatever. The Rebbeim were feeling mad. Who you come and give Techacha? It's not your Talmud. It's something if it's your Talmud. The Rebbe-Talmud relationship is Mechayev Techacha. So if it's not the Rebbe-Talmud relationship, Techacha, where does Techacha come in? It doesn't come in over there, Bechlal. There was such a thing as a Machiach. There was such a thing as a Magid or whatever, that people would travel around to different towns and give Musar. Man, I'm sure. Would they Talmud Chachamim? Who knows? It's a historical thing, to look at if were these people Talmud Chacham or not. Some people have a gewaldige kayach to darshan. They not necessarily have so much teichen. They just speak very well, right? That's why Moshe was kvad peh, right? Because you want to hear what he has to say, because he's Moshe Rabbeinu, and not because he's a gewaldige speaker. You have all these motivational speakers and these gewaldige inspirational rabbis. What is it? I don't know, right? B'vadai sheyesh kan chidush behilchas Talmud v'Rav. B'vadai, there's a chidush over here in Hilchas Talmud v'Rav. Gidram shel advarim nira, and the gather of it is asay. The gam Kabbalah's Talmud me Rabbi noigu hachok shechachmas meruba mimaisav en chachmas miskayamas. And this also, meaning the understanding of this is that somebody that's chachmas meruba mimaisav, right? So en chachmas miskayamas, meaning that he doesn't have the klei kibul to be makabel the chachma. Right, and we said a different time that this Mishnah and Avis, that Kolsha Ma'isa Merume Chachmasa Miskayemes, Rabbeinu Yonah says that that's the Spitz Gula to be Ben Elamabah, to be Mekayim. It's Kilu is Mekayim Kol HaMitzvahs. It's Kilu is Mekayim Kol HaTorah. Why? In the Avis Nasan it says why. Avis Nasan it says the Kolsha Ma'isa Merume Chachmasa Miskayemes Hanam Anasa V'Nishma. That's exactly what Kabbalah's Torah is. Right? If a Talmud is Mekabel Torah and it's not Mekabel Techacha, meaning that the concept of a Talmud that doesn't accept Techacha together with the Rebbe, together with the Torah of the Rebbe, he's only being Mekabel Chachma. he's not being mekabel. So his chachma is meruba mimaisav, and memela his chachma is not miskayemes. So it's like Pisa Miramses. The whole thing just keeps on falling through. It never holds. In order for it to hold, you have to have the teichacha. The klekilba for it is teichacha. Kemoikein in kabbalas hachachma miskayemes in kabbalas hachachma merubihi mekabbalas hamaisav. Right? Umanias kabbalas teichachta shel harav. And when a Talmud stops or withholds the Rebbe for giving him teichacha, or it's not mekabel the teichacha of the Rebbe, yesh bazeh hefsed b'shchasas kabbalas hachachma. It destroys the klekibel. It's like the clay kibble cracks, everything runs out. It's not negeya anymore. And he's givaldi because he brings a makar from a Gemara brachas. Hey, Amra la pasuk alei elai hahara, come up to me to the mountain to Har Sinai ve'etno lecha es luches even. I'll give you the luches es haTorah es hamitzvah shekasavti lo roisa. So the Gemara darshans luches elu asar sadibris. Torah is a mikra. V'hamitzvah zu Mishnah, asher kosavti elu neviim uksuvim, l'haraitzim zu Gemara, melamed shekulim nitnu l'Moshe Sinai. All these things were given to Moshe Sinai. V'hinei b'reish Megillah amru, the Gemara says at the beginning of Megillah, shahar neviim amdu Yisrael. The many neviim were around Klal Yisrael for the tkufa. Kozman Klal Yisrael had neviim. Ela shanavuah shehutzrucha l'deres nichtava, navuah shehutzrucha l'deres lo nichtava. The Dafka Nevuah that was L'Tzarech HaDeres was written, if it wasn't L'Tzarech HaDeres, it wasn't written. Here's Rashi says, Nevuah Shehutzrucha L'Deres Hainu L'Teichacha. And that's what we said also in the Gemara in Ilmale Leichatu Yisrael. They would have gotten just Chamish Chumshei Torah and Sefer Yeshua, because the rest of the Navi is all Teichacha. So Elamai, the whole Metzias of Nevi'im and Ksuvim is gebayt on the fact that there's a concept of Teichacha. Remember the Chazin and the Nevuah Shalei Nichtava, the whole concept of why Nevuah was written, Ela l'shem tzarech haderes b'teichacha, nichneses hi b'chlal bris matan Torah, the chelik in the bris of matan Torah, the Har Sinai. Sharei kach amra, asher kasavti elu neviim uksuvim. Asher kasavti is neviim uksuvim, that means teichacha. Shema mina, so we see from here, shematam teichacha mahava chelik shel matan Torah. This that a Rebbe gives teichacha to a Talmud is a chelik of matan Torah. Ukashem shematam teichacha mahava chelik shel matan Torah. The same way that giving teichacha, the Rebbe giving the Talmud teichacha is a chelik of matan Torah. K'moikin kabbalas teichacha muchrach li is chelik mekabbalas divrei Torah. The Talmud being mekabel the teichacha is also a chelik of kabbalas divrei Torah. The Talmud also leladu b'makom rabbim like kaifle. That's what Rashi says in the Gemara in Daf Ches. So that's where it's at. V'kaniganu liyuchad oifish shel sefer dvarim. Now this is what's unique about sefer dvarim. That what? From the content of what we just explained, it's clear. There was a complete hechrich. We were, so to speak, forced, if we want to be makabel the Torah, to also be makabel the divrei teichacha of Moshe Rabbeinu. Shekeshem sheish hevdel ben mahusa shel dargas Moshe ben Nevuah, ben mahusa shel dargas Nevuah shel Shar Neviim. The same way that there's a difference in the madreg of Nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Nevuah of the other Neviim. The level of teichacha is also going to be different. It's not just the level of teichacha that's being given from Moshe Rabbeinu that's going to be different, but it's the level of teichacha that we are being makabel from Moshe Rabbeinu that's also going to be different. But it can't be that the teichacha and the Torah is off balance. The Torah and the teichacha have to be on the same level. So nish does azach that it could be, a Rebbe that all he does is give teichacha and learns one pasuk a day, right? It's in the quality and the quantity of the Torah and the teichacha has got to be the same. And if it's not, it's off. 1 second. Bekanu mekayme shel sefer dvarim, and this is the pshat in sefer dvarim. The sefer dvarim teichacha shel Moshe Rabbeinu. Sefer dvarim is the teichacha of Moshe Rabbeinu. K'mash Rashi mefarish vayilach b'rei sefer dvarim. The first couple of psukim of sefer dvarim, Rashi is mefarish exactly what the teichacha was. Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't even telling them lahedi; he was being meramis to them. The zahav is the egel, right? Love and the teifel, that's they were nitfal alamon, right? The lo'ilam zehu aklal. This is always the rule. Kishem shri evshel rav mebli ashpas divrei Torah. The same way you don't have a rebbe without the ashpa of his divrei Torah. Kamay kini evshel rav mebli ashpas divrei teichacha. The divrei teichacha has got to be the same as the divrei harav. The last paragraph over here. V'zui tiva shel achizas Yeshua b'sefer dvarim miyuchad. This is what's miyuchad, but why was Yeshua holding on to sefer dvarim? Shekeshem Yeshua Mahava Hatabas Rishena B'Shal Shalas HaMasera Shal Klalius Divrei Torah Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai Masara Yeshua. The same way that Moshe was Makabel Torah from Har Sinai, from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and gave it over to Yeshua, right? Kamokin Mahava Hu Yeshua Hatabas Rishena B'Shal Shalas HaMasera Shal Techacha B'Yisrael. Therefore, Yeshua becomes the one to be Mamshech, to be the second one, to give Techacha to Klal Yisrael. V'chol Rav Hamashmiya Divrei Techacha L'Talmidai Ein Sefer Shel Inyan Mesmata B'Teres Kim Mitzvah Techacha Greda. It can't be separated as a different mitzvah that a Rebbe gives mitzvah to Talmud also Hecheach Techiach. According to what the Rishiv is saying, it's very shaykh. Halacha L'Maisa. Oh no, just thinking. That this Techacha that a Rebbe gives a Talmud, it's not necessarily Hecheach Techiach Isamisecha. It's a chelik of Talmud Torah. If it's a chelik of Talmud Torah, then it's Yomam from this pasuk, or it's from whatever pasuk of Talmud Torah that we're going to be learning about, right? It's the relationship. It's the relationship between a Rav and a Talmud. It's really the cement that holds it, the glue that holds it together is the Teichacha. Because mitzad Torah, mitzad the etzem Kabbalah Torah, there's all kinds of tricks that a person can have to learn the Chachmas Torah, right? That having the fact that you have a Rebbe, and the fact that the Talmud exists over here, and the Talmud is ready to listen to everything that the Rebbe is saying, automatically means he's ready to be Makabel the Teichacha from the Rebbe. The Rebbe is going to give the Teichacha. It's a given that the Rebbe is going to give the Teichacha, and it's a given that if he's a real Talmud, he'll be Makabel the Teichacha of the Talmud. Where did this whole business start from? This whole thing of Teichacha. This whole thing, right? Where did it start from? From that moment, so in that moment, that Sefer Dvarim became the stempel for Yeshua. And just to end off with my one line, Chaim Belin Latanis, the Rishiv is referring to himself and his Talmud Rebbe. A lot of Teichacha. Yeah, Hashem, I had a friend who's get very turned off whenever we would talk about, like we were just all saying, okay, Rishiv yelled at me about this, Rishiv yelled at me about that, Rishiv yelled at me about the other, right? There was part of the matzav was to get yelled at. It was like almost a schus. It's interesting because if you
then you know your name.
Yeah, if you read up about the Balei Musar, I believe in Kelma was they had a pose or a posture that they would stand in when they were Makabel Teichacha. Being Makabel Teichacha was a real thing. It wasn't just getting yelled at. It's a very foreign musig by most people. The concept of a real Rebbe-Talmud relationship, I think by many people, is a very foreign thing also. It shouldn't be, but unfortunately it is, right? And again, it goes hand in hand. It's two sides of the same thing. I thought it was very interesting mahalach over here.